1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Rebellion.
Rebellion is built on hope.
And redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody. I just messed that up, but who cares? Welcome to Star Wars Reactions. We're opening the show with a Carabas moment, as just, is natural for me. So, welcome, everybody. We appreciate you joining us today. We got so much to talk about. That's probably why I'm tongue-tied, so we're not going to delay things. My name's Aaron Harris. Joining me is my co-host, the David Motters. David, what's up, brother?
Oh, man. A lot in the Star Wars world, a lot to record here, a lot to cover, and a lot to react to. I'm ready to react, and I'm super excited that we have a returning guest. We love him. We love his work and his commentary, and so I'm ready to react with him and with you.
Absolutely. We are joined today, as David alluded to, by a fantastic Star Wars author. He is known for books such as the Stormtrooper book, Ultimate Star Wars, one of my personal favorites, Star Wars Rebels, the Visual Guide, the talented Adam Bray. Adam, my friend, welcome to Star Wars Reactions. Thank you for joining us again.
Hey, it's previously Fat Adam.
You have lost a ton of weight. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm almost 200 pounds lighter, so it's quite a difference.
That is a massive difference. I'll have to get your secrets. I got some to lose thanks to being lazy during lockdown. So.
Yeah, I think most of us do as we get older, get to the middle-aged, and especially with COVID and everybody home and around the holidays, it's easy to put the pounds on. I find that if I cheat, I can gain up to 7 pounds in a day of if I'm really cheating around these holidays. So it's crazy. I don't understand it. I don't think I was ever putting weight on that quickly, when I was bigger, but something about the smaller I get, the more work it is to maintain that. I feel for the first time in my life, I understand what it's like to be a supermodel or a movie star, and all the starving that they do, and all the jokes about that. It's true. It's true.
I can understand. I can't imagine losing that much weight, but that is just an incredible feat, and congrats on that. That is definitely something you should to be celebrated. So,
thank you.
All right. Well, we have a jam-packed episode today. We're not going to hesitate getting going. We got a ton of news today. Because there hasn't been much happening around lately, but we got some news we're going to go ahead and jump through. Firstly, I just want to mention, of course, it wasn't a news story that broke. It was just something I discovered by accident, really. If you have a Kindle or an Amazon account, or have the Kindle app on your iPad or your phone or anything, go into the store and search for the High Republic free sampler. I found that by fluke this past week, and it is quite a jam-packed little sampler for the upcoming High Republic series. It has literally the first 7 chapters of Light of the Jedi.
Wow.
The first 3 chapters of Into the Darkness by Claudia Gray. The first 3 chapters of A Test of Courage by Justine Ireland. And it has samples from the High Republic Adventure comic coming from IDW and the High Republic comic coming from Marvel. Wow. All jammed into this little sampler. I will tell you what, after the first chapter of Light of the Jedi, I was sold. I was, it caught me complete. You know, I enjoy a good Star Wars book. I love them. But when I started reading this after the first chapter, I was like, oh my Lord, I want more. And by the time I had all 7 chapters done that afternoon when I found it, and I was like, oh gosh, I have to wait till January to finish this. I was so mad. But you need to check that out. If you're not, if I know I've talked to a couple people, they're not entirely sure whether they're going to get into the High Republic stuff or not, and this and that, 'cause they don't like reading a lot of books and stuff. If you're not sure you're going to like, if you're not sure you're going to like it, do the sampler. It's a good way to spend an afternoon reading a few samples from each of these first 3 books, and it gives you a sense of where it's going. And it is so good. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I know that apparently the gag order was apparently lifted somewhat, so people are starting to talk about it, and people who had gotten samples of gotten the pre-release of the books have been talking about it, not giving away secrets, but just been giving their reviews, spoiler-free reviews, which have been good, and there's been a lot of high praise for it. So this is something to look forward to.
Adam, I was going to ask you, do you get these like kind of the review copies of books? I know some people on podcasts get them. And if you don't, are you going? What is your take? Are you going to get into the High Republic and devour this publishing initiative?
With review copies, I don't usually get them automatically. If I'm working on something at the time where I need it as reference, I can get it one way or another. Once in a while, a very nice publisher, someone in their publicity will just out of the blue contact me and say, hey, can I send you one of these? And I really appreciate it when they do that. Probably if I asked, I could get a lot of things. I don't normally ask unless it's something really special that I really want. But am I going to get into it? It depends. I don't have. I wish I could be like the fans that just devour everything, but I don't really understand where they find the time. So I have to pick and choose a bit. If I end up having free time when this comes out, I may. But if I'm busy, I won't. But if I get offered, something where I've got to incorporate the material, then certainly I'll read what I need to get up to speed on that.
Understood.
Yeah, it's been hard for me to keep up with all the books as well. It's just timing is crazy. So I just tend to pick out books that I think I might like and read them. So I was very happy when I found the sampler because I was like, you know what? Let me see if it's even worth my time investing in it at this point. And
sure.
I was impressed. I was very blown away. I love Charles Soule when he wrote the Vader comics. That run on the Vader comics. Those were phenomenal. So this is going to be fun to read once it gets out and I can get past the first 7 chapters. So following up with books and release dates, we actually have 2 dates for upcoming novels that have changed. One actually was a change date. The other was actually an announcement of the date. Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good, the second of the Thrawn Ascendancy books, has been pushed up. Instead of May 4th, it's now going to be released on April 27th. So get that a week early. I'm happy. Then also the new book that they announced, The Rising Storm, which Calvin Scott is writing, part of the High Republic, will be released on June 29th. Very cool. So something to look forward to in 2021, as it is right around the corner with those dates. I think the biggest news, though, happened the evening of December 10th, my friends.
Well,
And that, of course, was the Disney Investor Day live stream. That took place. Incredible night for Disney. They did a spectacular job putting on this, what they called Virtual Investor Day. And they announced an incredible amount of stuff for Disney Plus and for Star Wars. They announced a lot of stuff for Marvel as well. I think they announced 10 new projects for Marvel, 15 new projects for Disney itself. But we got an announcement of 10 projects that were upcoming, and it blew my mind away. I was so surprised with some of this, and it was incredible. I'll admit I got in trouble watching this live stream, this virtual investor day, because I was at my birthday dinner. And I'm sitting there at the restaurant with my earbuds on, looking at my phone instead of, socializing with my parents who came in from out of town. But let's go through here a little bit and see what we got announced. There were, they said they had 10 projects. 3 of them we actually already knew about, that had already been announced. But then there were 7 brand new ones that just came out that we're so stoked about. Of course, we knew the Cassian Andor series is coming. They're calling it Andor. It's already filming. It's been filming for about 3 weeks now. And it's coming in 2022 is the date they gave for that. They didn't narrow it down any, just coming in 2022. They released an incredible sizzle reel talking about Andor. Had Diego Luna interviewed in there, showed some scenes from Rogue One, some concept art. It was absolutely astonishing. This was probably my second favorite announcement of the night there. What did y'all think of Andor?
you want to go, Adam?
Sure, yeah. I didn't see a lot in there that really told me anything new as far as the footage. It was I didn't notice what I didn't notice, which surprised me, was I didn't notice them using the volume like they do for the Mandalorian, that big wraparound video screen. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was in the footage or not, but I didn't see it. What I did notice were lots of large sets. So it looks like they're maybe filming more in a traditional way rather than using this tech from the Mandalorian's production. So I don't know if that's just a design preference, or maybe they're telling a different sort of a story with this. So that'll be interesting to see how it actually looks in the finished product. You said it was 2022 when it's airing?
2022, that's correct.
Yeah, it's a long time to wait. So is Obi-Wan airing sooner? Is that 2021?
Well, that's the next project that they announced that they talked about was Obi-Wan Kenobi. They have not they never gave a date for release of Kenobi.
Well, if they're filming them at the same time, I would presume they'd come out the same year. So what I'm wondering is, what are we actually going to get this year? Because we know we're going to get that Bad Batch one. I think we know that's maybe the next one coming, and we know we're going to get the gallery, again, the making of behind the scenes. So that's 2 things. I hope that's not the only Star Wars content we get this year, but I don't. Maybe you've got more information to tell us, but that's kind of light. So I hope they speed things up a little bit.
Well, I hope you're right with Bad Batch, because Bad Batch, they talked about that. They released a sizzle reel. It's going to be set after Order 66. They're going to be mercenaries, just fighting their way for survival. But they never did say when they're going to release it. There was no year. There was no general year given. There was no date. Nothing. The only thing that from this whole list of stuff that they talked about, the only thing they said for sure was coming out in 2021 was season 3 of The Mandalorian. And they said that would be Christmas of 2021.
Okay. All right.
So that caught me right off the bat when they announced that was, all right, season 3, Christmas. It's a little later than normal, which makes sense because they haven't been able to film yet because of all the COVID restrictions and lockdowns and stuff. But they're saying that will be Christmas of 2021. But everything else was 2022 or after, or just no date given. I'm in my mind, the way I looked at it, especially with the Bad Batch sizzle reel, the way they showed it, and there was a lot of new footage in that, believe it or not, in that sizzle reel. So it makes me think that they're so far along that they could possibly get it done and released in 2021, but they didn't want to commit to it, not knowing what was going to happen COVID-wise down the road.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm with you. I think for some reason I have this sense that that we'll see it this year. I don't know if that's something that's been said or just my assumption, but like you, I think the fact that there's so much completed footage suggests to me they're much vastly farther along in production of that than they are any of these live action things. So I think if I had to guess on it, I think we'll see it later in this coming year.
I think so. I mean, in my mind, I'm seeing it, and of course, this is just my mind playing games with me. I'm thinking probably late summer, fall of 2021. And it would probably run right up to, it'll probably run just like Clone Wars did, dozen or so episodes, and it'll carry it right up till the holidays when we get season 3 of Mando.
Right.
So we have one flowing right into the other. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it in my head. I could be completely off, but that's kind of the feel I'm getting. So I just got nothing to back it up. Take it with a grain of salt. That's what my gut says. So
right.
All right. Now back to Obi-Wan Kenobi for a minute, because we got the Kenobi show. They did announce it will start filming in March. It will be set 10 years post Revenge of the Sith. Directed, of course, by Deborah Chow. We knew that. But the big announcement, which really blew a lot of people away, it blew me away, was they announced a return of Hayden Christensen to Star Wars, a part of the Kenobi series, as Darth Vader. That was mind-blowing to hear that. David, what did you think when you heard Christensen was coming back?
Yeah, that was pretty wild. The first thing I think all three of us heard was, well, do you bring him back and he's just in the suit, right? I mean, everyone's talked about this, right? Why would you bring him back? You could have anybody in the suit. They could have that big fella they had who, I'm trying to remember his name, I can see his face, who played Vader in Rogue One. Of course, we just lost David Prowse. But I remember seeing Anakin in the suit in episode 3, and everyone can tell the difference, right? He just doesn't have the shoulders, the thickness, the chest of a David Prowse. And so the sense, I get there is that they're going to be showing his face. One of the things that, I'm not going to take credit for this, but I've heard some people talking about it, was maybe, clips of Hayden, inside the mask, kind of like they did in Star Wars Rebels when, Ahsoka takes a chunk out of the mask. It'd be interesting to see Hayden underneath that mask, and maybe in a battle with Obi-Wan. Kathleen Kennedy did allude to it being the ultimate rematch. So I can't imagine them bringing him back and we don't see his face. But I was really excited. I love seeing Hayden Christensen in that. I'm excited for him. And I'm excited for us Star Wars fans. And I also think that they changed the name, right, from Kenobi to Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? They did a little changeroo on the name. They added a little.
Yeah, I'm glad to see Hayden coming back. I had hoped they would. Of course, I couldn't have been certain, but I felt like it was a missed opportunity not to use him in Rogue One for the one scene with Vader in the back to tank. Even though kind of in a foggy sort of a way, it kind of looked like him, obscured, but they didn't use him, and we got a voice cameo in The Rise of Skywalker, but it was a missed opportunity not to have a ghost of Anakin appear. They could have had him appear with Yoda or instead of Yoda, because I think Anakin more than anyone is the one everybody wanted to see, I think. So and I don't know why they didn't have him, but so to finally have him back, I think it's great, and it's Star Wars back on track in another instance, so that's good.
Yes, it is. Well said. So, running through, we got 2 new shows in development that they talked about, both being developed by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. We have Rangers of the New Republic, which will be set during the time of The Mandalorian. And what's unique about this one is it says it will intersect with future stories, which will culminate into a climactic story event. So I found that quite interesting. Some people are predicting.
That's the Marvel model.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Some people are predicting this might be the Cara Dune spinoff, but we'll have to wait and see. But the other one, which of course everybody kind of knew this was coming, is the Ahsoka series. Ahsoka is getting a live-action limited run series starring, of course, Rosario Dawson, who brought Ahsoka to life a couple episodes ago of The Mandalorian. So that was probably the one that everybody was probably most people were most excited about. What were your thoughts on both of these series, Adam?
Like you said, I expected Ahsoka. The Rangers one was a pleasant surprise. I think what's interesting is Dave Filoni has kind of suggested that Ahsoka's appearance that we've seen in The Mandalorian and some of these other things may actually be taking place prior to the sort of postlude when we see Ahsoka in Star Wars Rebels. That what we're seeing now is not necessarily after that. So it's interesting to reframe all of this. What we're seeing in this live action is something that would lead up to Ahsoka in those white robes, kind of like Gandalf the Grey, which makes me think that whatever exciting events this is going to culminate into could very well be, the encounter with Grand Admiral Thrawn, maybe having a grand return to the Empire and to the galaxy, with some kind of great big space battle or some such. So we'll have to see. But I think if that's the timing we're looking at, it might fit.
Yeah, I was excited to see this. I know that Aaron and I, we talked about this a couple episodes ago, that Ahsoka being in, I guess it'd be chapter 13. Yes, chapter 13, the Jedi. That it was very much a soft, a pilot episode, to introduce her. And I was kind of surprised actually to see that it would be a limited run series, putting a limit on that. That's not to say that Filoni and Favreau can't come back to it and add more and see how it goes, but that is interesting. And like Aaron was alluding to, it'd be interesting with Rangers of New Republic. Dune is a marshal, but I wonder if she's going to be a ranger. Is that the next step up? That was it named the pilot Carson, who was alongside Dave Filoni as Trapper Wolf, handed her that badge. When Aaron and I initially talked about it in that episode, we didn't know if it was a badge or if it was a medal to be given to her because of her losses on Alderaan. But now we know it is a badge. And so I would love to see more of Cara Dune in a show like Rangers of the New Republic. But like both of you have said, it might not include her at all, but I would love to see that. But this will be interesting. And, kind of like, Adam mentioned a minute ago, you've got this Marvel model, and it'll be interesting because Bob Iger just a little while ago wanted to put the brakes on Star Wars because of what happened with Last Jedi and Solo. So I'm curious to see how they play this out. Considering, what happened then. Is it too much Star Wars too fast?
We're about to find out, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to run through the last few of these pretty quick. There is a Lando show that's coming out. It's going to be another event series like Ahsoka. It'll be helmed by Justin Semia. So that's looking pretty cool. There is Star Wars Visions, which is a series of animated short films brought to you by the world's best anime studios and creators. Just a different take on Star Wars, which will be cool. We're getting a droid story, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's about droids, and particularly it's following R2 and 3PO as they guide a new hero. So that's looking awesome. And then there's an untitled, and I'm going to butcher his name because I do it every time he comes up on our show. Wakia Watiti?
I'll help you. Adam and I will help you.
Taika Waititi.
Yep.
There it is. He's developing a film, but that's literally all we know is that he's developing a film. So those are coming. Then there's two more projects left. There's a series called The Acolyte, which is being helmed by Leslie Headland. This is interesting because this is going to be a dark side series, focusing in on the dark side, and it's going to be set in the final days of the High Republic era that they're creating. So it'll be, getting something based on the dark side is different than what we've gotten so far in Star Wars. So I'm looking forward to that. But probably what came as my favorite announcement was the video from Patty Jenkins. You may know Patty from such wonderful films as Wonder Woman and the soon-to-be released on Christmas Day on HBO Max, Wonder Woman 1984. But there is a Rogue Squadron movie that she is going to be making and is slated for a Christmas 2023 release. Now, all these last projects, what are your thoughts on on these? Start with you, David.
Yeah. With the Taika Waititi film, it's going to have to be after 2023, so that's amazingly long ways away. We're talking 3 years from now for Patty Jenkins' movie. Further, 4 or 5 years for Taika Waititi's, which is a major bummer. I would love for that to be sooner, but I'm excited for Patty Jenkins and her movie. I did watch that video. It's very inspiring. A Droid Story, I heard that is actually going to be a movie, and it's a combination of Lucasfilm Animation and ILM, right, the visual effects department. The Acolyte is interesting, very interesting, because it is set in the final days of the High Republic, right, where you just mentioned where, all this, information starting now on the High Republic. It would have came out in the fall, but COVID has set it all back. But that is interesting, the Acolyte. The Lando series, don't really know anything. We don't know who's starring in it, animated, not animated, so who knows there. But I think out of those ones you just mentioned, I look at it, I think I'm the most interested in the Acolyte series, and this kind of dark side to kind of contrast with everything else. So it would be something where it comes up to the end of the High Republic. And again, I don't know how far that butts up against, I guess it would be Kevin Scott's Dooku Jedi Lost. So it would be interesting to see how far that series goes. But those are just some of my thoughts on that.
Excellent. Adam, what did you think of these announcements there?
Yeah, I think as well, I'm most interested in the Acolyte there. I read a clip of an interview with Leslie Headland, the showrunner for that, and she talked about how she was researching the geography of the galaxy and trying to figure out what all the different planets would actually be like during that time period. Because it's a time period we have not seen yet. I get the impression it's considerably before what we've seen, before the events of the prequel trilogy. Maybe, I don't know if they said, maybe even hundreds of years before. It was the impression that I got. Kind of maybe even about the roughly these novels that we're getting now. That was my impression of it. So I was impressed by that she was doing the research and the geography and cultures and whatnot of that time period. So yeah, with Lando, I don't think we know whether this is even Billy D's Lando or what's his name, the young Lando, Donald Glover. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see, or maybe it's some of both. Kind of like how they did the Indiana Jones Chronicles when Harrison Ford cameoed for that episode. Maybe we'll get some of both actors, which I think would be ideal. The others, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I hope they put the pedal to the metal and speed some of this stuff out. But I get the impression, at least for this year, they might be intending to intersperse Star Wars with Marvel shows. I suspect that we'll only get one of those at any one time. So maybe they'll alternate Star Wars, Marvel, Star Wars, Marvel. I don't think they're going to pile it all on quite like a Netflix would do, where you've got multiple things dropping at the same time. I kind of wish they would, because I only go to Disney Plus, for one thing at a time right now. So as far as the movies, though, I guess they're putting faith in the idea that movie theaters will still be operating around the country when these movies come out. I think that remains to be seen with so many movie theaters failing and, with all the lockdowns around the country over the holidays. I think when the world opens up again, I think a large chunk of our movie theaters will not, are probably closed forever. So I guess it remains to be seen whether that'll be a viable venue to show the Star Wars movies. I have a hunch that some of these may just be premiering on Disney Plus, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, we'll have to wait and see on that, because you bring up a good point on that. We don't know what it's going to look like. We know Warner Brothers is setting their stuff up to come out on Disney, on HBO Max, and there's some other deals being cut behind the scenes for other movies, and who knows what it's going to look like by the time 2023 rolls around for Rogue Squadron. So,
right, it'll
be interesting for sure. And I got to say, I love the fact, and I never thought about it with the Lando show. I love the fact you brought up that episode of Young Indy, because that was probably one of my favorite episodes. when Harrison Ford showed up for the beginning and the end of that episode, where he's kind of like telling the story while he's hiding out. So I loved that episode, and I never thought it could be like that. And it very well could. We could get some Billy D and some Donald Glover. That would be absolutely awesome. So We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it. None of us are getting any younger, and all these original actors are getting older. So you got to use them while you have them, or one day you're not going to be able to use them anymore. So I hope they do something like that.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. Very good. So with that actually does wrap up all of our news. So we got a great discussion ahead of Chapter 15, The Believer. We're going to jump into that. Before we do, though, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here, joined by our special guest, the talented Adam Bray. We are discussing today Chapter 15 of The Mandalorian. This episode, of course, was called The Believer. Then I saw her face. Kind of makes sense with this episode. This episode was released December 11th, 2020 on Disney Plus. Directed and written by another man whose last name I will mess up, Rick Rick, the Rick guy. David, help me out.
I will help you. I've been practicing it. Rick Famuyiwa.
Ditto.
All right.
So, in this episode, great episode, and just a quick synopsis. This episode opens up with Cara Dune bending a lot of her martial rules, springing Mayfield from the prison work camp to help Mando, Boba Fett, and Fennec Shan get the location of Moff Gideon's light cruiser so they can find, of course, the child. Mayfield tells him he needs to access an Imperial terminal, which he goes to the planet Morak to a refinery, a secret Imperial refinery there. They sneak in, they get the data, and of course then they have to make their escape, in which we see some tremendous action, and a lot of fun and a lot of reveals in the episode. Not massive reveals like, Ahsoka or Bo-Katan showing up, but some interesting twists in the story there. Mainly talking about Mando and his helmet. So let's take a look at this. David, what were your initial thoughts after you watched this episode for the first time?
Oh, definitely. This was a unique episode in terms of how much action and exposition were in it. Rick Famuyiwa, he just balanced it out, I thought, really well. From the exposition that Mayfield gives to going into pirates, chasing their tank transport and stuff like that. It just so well done. Action, I thought, was incredible. I really enjoyed Mayfeld's and Mando's escape from the Imperial mining facility. And there's just something about Slave One flying into a scene that just doesn't. Oh man, the tension in the mess hall was palpable. You could just see it all over Mando's face and Mayfeld's. I put in my notes here, I really dislike Valen Hess. I really dislike that guy. Great acting, unbelievable. The exposition, getting back to that, by Mayfeld, throughout the entire episode is very interesting, and I'll talk about it in more detail in my psychology corner. Two different parts. One is when he's talking to Mando in the tank about bending rules and who are we at our core, and then later on his exposition, his interactions with Valen Hess. I'm going to talk about both of those again from a psychological perspective in my psychology corner. But to just kind of finish up my initial thoughts, I'd say Star Wars is about redemption, and I love a redemption story. So I really enjoyed Mayfeld's Mayfeld. He's not Mayfield. Mayfeld's story and his redemption. I also like Boba Fett. He took some time to clean up his armor. Although I do like the worn look. I think I'm trying to decide which look I like better. I love the Star Wars Episode 2 callback with the Sonic Charge. I thought that was sweet. We had shore troopers here. And something I really thought about, and Adam referred to it a little bit, I don't know if people picked up on it, was the Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian. They're going to do a second season of that, which I'm excited about. But in the first season, you see Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and even Rick Famuyiwa talking about how much they love Star Wars and playing with the action figures. And I really felt like in this episode, it was Rick Famuyiwa playing Star Wars in his backyard with action figures and ships. You could really see him doing that in his love for it. I thought he did a great job on this. So I kind of felt like he was doing the same thing that Favreau and Filoni did as kids. So outstanding episode.
Very good. Adam, what were your first thoughts when you first watched the Believer?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this location. I think it's the first real jungle that we've seen in the series. They've done a great job this season going, to a different location, a different, planet environment for every episode. So that was fun, and the whole it kind of looks like a hydroelectric dam almost, where this Imperial base, I guess it's a refinery, is. It was just a great scenario, with that bridge and all the shore troopers and stormtroopers there, and the escape at the end out on the balcony and the drop off and all that. So it was a really fun location and a design for the set that they chose. So I really enjoyed that. Like David said, great scene there in the mess hall. They've done a really great job too with Din, the Mandalorian, in showing, his fatherly aspects coming out, especially that episode, where he's got the baby in the back in the conduits on the ship, and he's telling him how to connect the wires and stuff, and you see that interchange with them, how it's like a father talking to his young son. And this, when we see Din, take his helmet off in order to get that information, it's really impactful. It's really meaningful. It's the first time that we've seen him, do that, where he's seen by other living beings. And you can really feel, how much he cares for Grogu, and by doing this, that he's willing to set his these dogmas aside for the love of this little baby Yoda. So that was really cool how meaningful they made that. It's not a throwaway thing. So I enjoyed that. Yeah, good use of the characters. I enjoyed seeing Cara Dune in this episode. Enjoyed seeing Fennec Shan, who we see is going to be in the Bad Batch series as well. So that's fun. I'm gratified that they gave, Ming-Na Wen's character such weight and such importance. One of my concerns with season 1 was, how really her appearance was a cameo. They had her in a couple of scenes and then they killed her character right away. And my fear was, well, if that's all we ever get of her, that's kind of a throwaway. She was kind of underutilized for an actor like Ming-Na Wen, who's got a following from, Mulan and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Stargate and other great sci-fi genre things. If that's all they were going to use her for, it was kind of, hate to say a waste, but I was afraid that was what it was. So to see her importance in this series and Star Wars going forward, I think that's great. I'm really pleased with that. As far as their choice of troopers, I thought it was really cool because I really grew to love, the shore troopers and the dark troopers. And, we've got a different variation on the tank trooper, as well as being green. They've actually changed out some of his armor. It's more of like a, like a snow trooper armor, or an Imperial officer, battle armor that he's wearing on his chest piece. So there's a little bit changed out. So that'll be a great series of action figures. I'm sure we'll get a driver, and we'll get one of Mayfeld and probably one of Din in that same armor. And also cool for the shore trooper for action figure collectors. The version they had in the episode with just the red armband, that was actually, I think it was a Walmart exclusive, so it was very rare and hard to get, even though it was the more common one in Rogue One. So now they're re-releasing these as part of the archive collection and making it easier and another chance for people to get that action figure. So that's kind of fun for collectors like me.
Yes, it is. I saw they were releasing those right after they released this episode, so that is awesome. This episode, I thought this was a great episode. This episode had a lot of great stuff in it. It wasn't as big and fast-paced and big, massive reveal. It was super exciting like some of the other episodes this season. But this had a lot of fun. It advanced the story, and it was interesting. It was fun. We didn't have a lot of, crossovers, big star crossovers like with Bo-Katan showing up or Ahsoka showing up or anything like that. This was just a fun episode, and I love the fact that we brought redemption back to Star Wars. This is one that was always been one of my things. Is Star Wars has always been a redemption story. I mean, we watched the movies, see the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. Rogue One, we had the redemption of Jen, and Rebels. We actually, I would even say we got the redemption of Kanan Jarrus. From running away to moving in to become a teacher and getting his redemption there. It was just a lot of redemption in Star Wars. And to me, you can't have Star Wars without redemption. And we got to see that for Mayfeld, which was great. I loved the undercover stuff. I loved the tank. I loved them battling the pirates on the Juggernaut tank thing. It was really cool, really awesome. It was a lot of fun. And I just overall thoroughly enjoyed this episode. So yeah, it was great. So let's talk about some of the aspects of the episode here. Let's talk Mayfeld. Mayfeld was what I thought was going to be a throwaway character from season 1. We saw him in the episode where they board the prison ship. He double crosses Mando, and Mando in return gives him payback and leaves him locked up in jail. I honestly did not think we would see this character again, much less see him put in a position where he could redeem himself, and he does to a certain extent. I didn't think we would get as much backstory to him as we did, with him being we knew he was a former Imperial operative, but finding out he was a part of Operation Cinder, which was a huge storyline from the books and the comics that involved the Emperor's revenge for the Death Star 2, his ultimate secret plan revenge to literally burn everything. So yeah, I was blown away with Mayfeld in this episode. Adam, let's start with you. When it came to Mayfeld and his story, what stuck out to you the most in this episode with Mayfeld?
Yeah, I was surprised by the references to the novels, the Operation Cinder. So, yeah, that was a surprise. I didn't necessarily expect that. So I don't really know, how much. It's hard to guess how much this is going to bleed into the sequel trilogy and the publishing and all that. So that was interesting to see. I think that the exchange with them and that Imperial officer, we learned a lot about Mayfeld there, and what drives him, and the acting was great in that. So I enjoyed seeing that.
Me too. It was great. David, what were your thoughts on Mayfeld and his story?
Sure. I tweeted out earlier today that I really felt like Mayfield. I was teasing Bill Burr. I don't know that he would ever respond. He has over 1 million followers on Twitter. I was teasing that he stole my role as a psychologist. He plays the role of a psychologist in this episode. In the tank, we get exposition, then the excitement, right? So the exposition there is Mayfield talking to Mando about the staggeringly deep issue of who we are at our core, and how things, how do we act when things get messy, right? Do we change our rules? And we've seen humans do this throughout the history of time. And so I love how he gets that started and generates that conversation. And then after all the excitement of getting into that Imperial mining facility, we, just like Adam said, the discussion that Mayfeld has with Valen Hess is incredible. The facial expressions that Bill Burr does, and even some of the eyes watering when he hears Valen Hess say, hey, we're going to continue this plan. We're going to make, Vernon Khan look like child's play. And just the emotional change that you see in him was so well done by Bill Burr. Like I said, I'm going to talk more in depth in the psychology corner about the role that Mayfeld plays here. And he brings up, like I said, the issue of self, which I'll talk about from the psychological perspective, but also, Mayfeld brings up something that Adam and you, Aaron, and myself have seen a lot in Star Wars, which is this issue of perspective. Some of the novels have been getting at this, who's right, who's wrong. You look at Imperial soldiers and you look at rebel fighters. There's a lot of right and wrong, gray area throughout this episode, and one thing that Mayfeld talks about is losing 5,000 to 10,000 of his own troops, or of Valen Hess's troops, but yet at the very end, he's a sharpshooter, right? I now put it together that in last season's episode, the joke that Mayfeld said was, I wasn't a stormtrooper. He was a sharpshooter, I think, and like you said, an Imperial operative that's a sharpshooter, and that's how he could make that shot. from the back of Slave One. But he blows up what? Several hundred Imperial troopers, right? You know, this starts to get really gray, right? What's right, what's wrong? Obviously, this argument is, to me, similar to what we talk about in World War II, right? We drop Fat Man and Little Boy on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we say what? That we're going to end this war. We're going to have a certain number of people die so that millions and millions and millions and millions more don't die. So it's such rich psychological material that Mayfeld brings to the table in this episode. And like I said, these episodes are making my life so easy as a psychologist because of the material that they bring every episode. So I loved Mayfeld in this episode.
Let's also take a look at Cara Dune, because she actually made some choices in this episode as well. We know at the end of the last episode, she was a marshal. She was told Mando, you know, I can't do everything I normally would have done for you because now I got this badge. But she finds a way to help Mando without really breaking the rules to get Mayfeld out of jail. She basically just has him transferred into her custody, takes him with her, and they end up going off helping. And at the end, out of his redemption story, Cara then sits there and is like, you know, it's a shame he didn't survive that explosion, and kind of lets him walk off into the sunset. So she definitely made a series of choices in and of herself when it comes to what she believes versus what she needed to do and should have done, and everything. So what did you think of Cara Dune's role in this episode, David?
Yeah, I guess it's like anything, right? We like to see these character arcs, and just like, you know, all three of us were mentioning, I think maybe we had a hint because, you know, Mayfeld and some of the other baddies in Chapter 6 of The Prisoner from last year, we thought they might make an appearance or so, but I had no way, you know, of knowing that they would give Mayfeld a redemption arc like that. Its character development with Cara Dune, same thing. Seeing her change over into this role, it has been neat. Again, I would love to see it continue in this a new Disney Plus series. That would be awesome. I like these situations. It's like with her, you know, seeing the change. You know, it's kind of like when we saw, like I said, Cara Dune and Fennec Shand up on that ridge, you know, helping Mando and Mayfeld get away. You know, she's watching him and she sees him take that last shot. Fennec Shand even says, "Nice shot." But there's something to say about rewarding behavior change. Again, here's the psychologist in me coming out, and you could see Kara's face, and then at the end, I like that. I liked how he was like, "Wait, are they gonna basically just kill me?" You know, and then you know, because that's kind of, I think, what Mayfeld's initial thought was. But then he realized, oh, okay, you're not saying it, but you're allowing me to go free. So I'm glad that she played that role in this chapter.
I love the complexity of this situation, because it opens him up, Mayfeld, that is, to come back in the future as well, to help out in the story. So I think it was a great thing, great element of Kara's growth that she did that. But then we also look at the fact that we had Kara working side by side with Fennec Shand. We have the rebel shock trooper with the Imperial assassin side by side, rifle by rifle, barrel side by side barrel, taking pot shots at Imperial troops, just one right after. They're alternating, taking these troops out, helping each other side by side, trusting each other, which, you know, 10 years before this, when at the Empire going on, would have never happened. What did you feel about that, the complexity of that relationship forming, Adam?
I liked it. It was. It was. You don't see a. I guess. Well, how do I want to say it? In Star Wars, you don't see a lot of female characters working together like that. So that was refreshing. It was something new, and I think it was kind of cool to see two sniper ladies, taking the shots together like that. It was just kind of a neat little addition to the action. I think there's lots of theories going around about what's going to happen with Boba Fett. There's persistent rumors of a Boba Fett series. I kind of wonder if Din the Mandalorian might end up dying. Whether it's this season or next season, and I've posited maybe Boba Fett will kind of take his place and be the Mandalorian. But either way, whether that happens or whether Boba Fett gets his own series, I think Fennec Shan has been set up here to be a good co-star in a series with him. So, again, I'm pleased with that she's Ming-Na Wen's got a substantive character there, so that's interesting to see how that may unfold.
Well, like Adam said, it was neat to see these two seemingly opposite elite females working together. It also it plays into this theme that we see throughout this episode. And again, it's something I'm going to talk about a little bit more in depth about in my psychology corner. I'm trying to tease that, but it's these issues of what is right and wrong, who is our enemy, who is our friend. Even like with Boba Fett, I never thought we would see a redemptive arc in him. To see in the last episode, the last chapter, forgive me, where Mando and Fennec pledge allegiance to him to finish out what they agreed to was honorable. And I never thought we would see this with Boba Fett. I remember being 14 years old in 1983 and seeing Boba Fett go in the Sarlacc pit, and never thought I'd see him again. So looking at, I guess thinking about what Adam said, this idea of, Boba Fett becoming the Mandalorian, it would provide such an emotional punch if Din does die, and if Boba took that over and he had more of a fatherly role like Jango had to him. It's a twist, but man, after Adam said that, I started playing that out in my mind, how that would go down. That could be some heavy stuff. But I guess seeing that in Boba, seeing Fennec help Mando, and particularly considering what she's talked about before, how much his armor is worth, how much the child is worth, on the bounty hunter market. It's surprising to see her and Kira working together, but I really enjoy it, seeing those two females in heroic roles.
Very much. It's a complete turn for Fennec Shan from what we've seen in the path in her initial introduction. So it's a good character growth for her and a complete change in direction. So very cool. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back to continue our discussion of The Believer. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David and Adam Bray with us today discussing The Believer. We're going to continue discussing that. Now, we have Mayfield and Din Djarin infiltrating the refinery here to get the information they need. And we see an interesting turn of events with the Mandalorian. Din actually has removed his Beskar and is wearing the Imperial uniform, but he hasn't revealed his face because he's got his helmet on. But when they discover that Mayfeld's former commanding officer is sitting in the break room where they need to go, Mayfeld can't go in. He doesn't have his helmet. He can't go in because they got to do a facial scan. He'd have to remove his helmet. So that puts Mando in a place where he has to go in and do something that he took an oath he would never do, which is reveal his face to the world. And he ends up revealing it to a world of Imperials, a room full of Imperials. And it could go really bad, but it ends up, thanks to Mayfield, turning into a saved situation. He steps in and intervenes with the officer who happened to be his old commanding officer. They just didn't recognize him. And they go back and forth and have a discussion. And I love the fact they called him, Mayfield told the officer that they called Mando Brown Eyes. With a unique name based on the fact that we got the helmet off. So this was something that, I'll be perfectly honest, I was not expecting in this episode. I was not expecting Mando's helmet to come off. And it did. We actually got to see Pedro Pascal in character. We got to see his facial expressions and everything. And he played it perfectly as someone who's not used to showing his face and not used to having all his cards on the table, which he does since he doesn't have the Beskar. And it turns out to be a really unique scene. And then we have Mayfield, who ends up killing everybody in the room and is like, yeah, here you go. Here's your helmet. Nobody has seen your face. And he goes, I definitely have not seen your face. And he puts his helmet on and they go on. And it is a camaraderie that has built up through this scene. To me, this was probably the most pivotal scene in the episode. How did y'all feel about this scene? We'll start with you, Adam.
I thought it was great. It was really impactful. It just kind of drove it home.
David?
Yeah, no, I'll piggyback off of Adam. This is huge character growth here. I feel like this whole episode, it starts with what Mayfeld says in the tank, or the tank transport, or whatever we want to call that thing, with him talking about when things get messy, do we change our rules? And what's interesting is not only does Mando, he's willing to take off his armor, Beskar armor, which he probably would not do in season 1 or really at the beginning of season 2 here, but he takes that off, all in the service of trying to get back the child, his son, for all intents and purposes. Like Adam mentioned, him being a dad, and then to show his face, and not just to show it in the mess hall, but to have it scanned. That's a huge thing. That's him saying, yes, I'm gonna, like Mayfeld says, I'll change my rules about the way. I'll show character growth. I will grow as a dad, as a human, for the sake of this young child. And so it's this huge character growth that we see in him, and again, it's good to see it pay off for Din, that they do get the location of the light cruiser and go from there. But huge character growth moment, and again, full of tons of tension there.
Very much. Boba Fett was also in the episode. You don't see him that much in this episode, but he does, show up. He's flying him around in Slave One, which apparently there's more room in that ship than I initially believed growing up, because he's fitting a whole crew in there. But it's good to see Boba Fett again. It opens up. I mean, his armor is completely cleaned up from the last episode. It went from the dirty, worn, beat up armor, very faded, to really a a matte finished, fully painted, nice bright color armor again. It's actually even more, looks like it's in better shape than it was when we saw him in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And we got, of course, to see his wicked flying skills in Slave One, and he got to use, which I found unique, was the seismic charge, like his dad used in Episode 2. But other than that, he was more of a background character in this episode. We only saw him a couple times. Fennec Shand and Cara Dune provide more of a supporting role in this episode for Mando and Mayfield. How did you feel about how they used Boba in this episode, David?
Yeah, I think it's just the right amount. Like I said earlier, I'm loving this. I didn't think I didn't know how I would, I think when they started at the end of the first episode of season 2, just showing him briefly with a gaffy stick, didn't know he also had that gun on him. And it looked like he's been spending time training with Tusken Raiders, quite honestly. And then to see the Slave One fly into the scene in last episode in the tragedy was incredible. I didn't know how it was going to play out. But ultimately seeing him has been really well done. They've done it, I think, in a great way versus me saying, I don't, there's too much, I guess ultimately, I feel like it's been the right amount in this episode. He flies him there. He's very serious. He helps, plays his role, but it's not too much. So I'm loving it.
Very cool. Very cool. I enjoyed it too. I thought it was a good mix because he is such a popular character in fandom that he could very easily overshadow some of the story, and I like the fact that they're using him, but they're keeping it subtle at that. So great job. Of course, with the ending of the episode ends with, of course, Moff Gideon on board his cruiser, and he gets called over by his officers, who say there's something you need to see. And a hologram pops up of Mando, and he basically gives word for word the same speech that Gideon gave in the last episode, in the final episodes of season 1, about, you have something I want, you don't know how much, you don't understand what you have or what I will do to get it back. It gives him that same speech, word for word. And to me that was a very powerful thing to do, to turn Gideon's words against him at that point. How did you feel about that closing scene, Adam?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. And Moff Gideon looked a bit scared there. So that was cool. I guess we're to presume the only way that he could send the transmission was if he knew Moff Gideon's coordinates. So that would clue Moff Gideon in that Mando knows how to locate him. So that does mean he's probably coming. It's interesting that we didn't see Baby Yoda. It might have just been because we'd already seen that final clip from the previous episode, and maybe that's enough. But there might be some surprises, maybe about the state that Baby Yoda's in or Grogu when we see him again in the next episode. So just hoping that Grogu's doing okay.
I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. The fact that we did not see Grogu other than in these synopsises from previous episodes, there was no new footage of Grogu in this episode. Was honestly kind of surprising. I figured we'd at least get a clip of him on board Gideon's ship or doing whatever that they were wanting to do, but we didn't, which was fine by me. I mean, the show's called, The Mandalorian, not Grogu, so it was nice to have him followed rather than and be in mystery as to what's happening to Grogu than knowing minute by minute what's happening. It provides a little bit of mystery. So
That's right.
Perfect. All right. So that we'll go ahead and close out our discussion there on The Believer. But let's go ahead and jump into our final thoughts on the episode. Personally, I just thought this was a great episode. I watched it several times. I've loved every minute of it. This was a lot of fun. There's a lot of character growth for Mando, and seeing and seeing the redemption of Mayfeld too was something I felt really good about. This was an episode that, even though the situation with Grogu is not resolved, we have a happy, I would say, somewhat of a happy ending to the story, or to this part of the story. So I enjoyed that. I loved the action. I loved the bringing back of the shore troopers, who I loved in Rogue One. I love seeing them again. They looked great, and it was just an all-around fun episode. David, how about your final thoughts?
I'm guessing that quite a few viewers will like the last two chapters, like what you were mentioning earlier, Aaron, about the big reveals of Ahsoka, Boba Fett, things like that. I'm guessing, but I've heard a lot of good feedback too about this one. A lot of people have enjoyed it. I like this just as much as those, I think a big reason why is because Mayfeld's talks with Mando reminded me of deep, deep concepts that humans need to examine in our lives and the lives of our children. So, like questions like, who are we deep inside? What is our true core identity? What is right and wrong? What happens when things get messy, like Mayfeld said? Do we all change our rules then? When Mayfeld is talking to Valen Hess in the mess hall, it reminded me of Darth Maul's statements to Ahsoka right at the end of the Clone Wars, season 7, and I'll get into those a little bit later. But just they're very deep, and people really need to think about what was said there, the exposition that Mayfeld talked about, and not just the action. So I'd say stick around for my psychology corner, and I would give it a solid A, because I feel like next episode, I think it's going to be an A+. I got a feeling in my bones, and I hope it's true, but I'd give a grade of A.
Very good, very good. All right. Adam, what are your final thoughts on the episode?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've seen it twice. I would gladly watch it a third time. One thing I didn't understand was the significance of the title of the episode, The Believer. Who do you guys think the believer is, and what is it they're believing?
That's a good question, because there's a lot of talked about belief in here with Mando. When it comes to his helmet and his beliefs, what does he truly believe in? Does he believe in the way? Does he believe in the child? Does he believe what is his ultimate belief in? What is he ultimately grounded in? Personally, I think when it comes to the believer, it is Mayfeld's belief in Mando that they're more alike than he lets on. Than they realize. They both have these things that they're hiding. They got these shields up. They got these helmets on, and Mayfeld has found a way to get past all that and believe in people again. And he's with the people he's worked with, and he's put his trust in Mando for this mission, and in Kara and in everybody else. And then Mando has to come in and become a believer in Mayfield when he has to ultimately reveal his secret by taking off his helmet. So I think it relates to a couple different people there. David, what do you think?
Wow, yeah, no, I'm so glad that Adam brought this up, because I meant to do that, but Adam's all over this. Yeah, I've thought about several different things. One, I can make an argument for Mando that he's changing what he believes in, right? And I mentioned that a little bit ago with not wearing his armor, taking the helmet off, so changing him as a believer and what he believes in. I have a slightly different take, Aaron, on Mayfeld. Like, he talks about being able to sleep at night, to be able to put your head on the pillow and sleep at night. I think you could see it in him. I think he's been tormented for a long time, so getting this opportunity allows him to believe in himself again, that, you know what, I am doing the right thing here. And I've heard some people, and I'll give credit where credit's due, that Cara Dune is the believer in this one, meaning that she, how her beliefs change about Mayfeld, and you could kind of, like I said, she's up on the ridge there with Fennec Shan, and she's like, kind of looking at him, and because of seeing what he does, because she starts off really angry at him when she goes to pick him off those chop fields there, and so I could see an argument for her as well. I can't make one for Boba or for Fennec Shan.
I agree with that. Did you have any thoughts on it, Adam?
No, I didn't actually. So I think that sounds good.
Perfect. Now, of course, we do grade each episode that we watch, just like you would get if you were in school. If you got an A, B, C, D, or F, we heard David graded the episode as an A a few moments ago. If you had to grade it, Adam, how would you grade the episode?
I would grade it an A. I'd give every episode this season an A. I think last season there might be a couple of B's, but this season it's been all A's.
Very good. I agree with both of you. This definitely was a solid A for me. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It was just a lot of fun, a lot of great stuff in it, and it was a good character-based episode, which was great to see, and I loved it. So, A's all around for the believer. Perfect. So A's all around for everybody. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining us to discuss The Mandalorian, Chapter 15. We appreciate you. If somebody wants to get a hold of you online, talk Star Wars, I know you know a lot about Marvel, or even world travel. You've traveled the world. What would the best way for somebody to get a hold of you and discuss stuff with you?
Sure. Best way to catch me is on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. I'm most often on Twitter. And the handle for all of those is @author Adam Bray, all one word. And if you're looking for holiday gifts or gifts any time of the year, I've got signed copies of all of my books are available. You can get a hold of me on social media, or my email's listed on my website at adambray.com, and I can arrange signed copies of Marvel and Star Wars books for you.
Excellent. And we'll have all those links for you on our website in the show notes, so you can check there as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Adam. We do greatly appreciate it, and hope you'll be able to join us again in the future.
Sure, gladly, anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam, and we will be right back with David's Psychology Corner. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. We want to say thank you again to Adam Bray for joining us. We appreciate his insights. David, take it away with your Psychology Corner for the week.
Oh man, I thought I had a lot to cover in the last two psychology corners, but wow, Mayfeld brings a lot to the table here. So let me jump in. Like I said, these episodes are making it very easy to talk about psychology, parenting, and fatherhood, and I'm very thankful for that. As I alluded to earlier in this episode, Mayfeld's talk with Valen Hess, I'll cover that one first, leads to perfectly from what I covered last week in my Psychology Corner. Recall, I talked about 3 critical things to do with your children, including teaching them the meaning of life. So I talked about that. You can go back and listen to that to hear me touch base on that and lay that out. But it leads into Mayfeld's talk here with Valen Hess. Mayfeld, if people recall, decided to raise a toast to Operation Cinder. And this led to questions that he had to Valen Hess, not only about the value of life and fellow Imperial soldiers, but also the lives of the people trying to defend their homes in that military action in burning Khan. So when our listeners look at and listen to what Valen Hess said, do they think he's evil? Right? This is a big one. Is there evil in the world? Was Hitler evil or just mentally ill? I listened to Coffee with Kenobi, their coverage of this episode just earlier, and Dan had Jay Krebs on from Podcast Stardust, as well as Din from F105, and I love his take on stuff. And he called Valen Hess a sociopath, right? So in psychology, in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, I've mentioned that before when I've discussed PTSD a few episodes ago. The DSM doesn't use sociopath or psychopath anymore. I like them. They convey the meaning I want. It's officially called antisocial personality disorder, and it's something we would see in a Ted Bundy, who we seen his behaviors in. There's a Netflix special on him, a 4 different episode special on him showing his behaviors. We could think about a number of different sociopaths. I'm blocking on a couple others, but that's fine. I don't want to go too deep into that. But Valen Hess brings this issue up, this issue of right and wrong. Is there evil in the world, right? So let me piggyback off of this when we think about Valen Hess and his willingness to sacrifice. You could see it. Played so well by that actor. But here's a question I've asked many people over the years, right? It's kind of like, Mayfeld talking to Valen Hess. And I always ask this. I ask people, if you walked up to Auschwitz, right? That was a massive concentration camp during World War II. If you walked up to Auschwitz during World War II, you walk up to the gate, it's locked, you can't get in, you don't want in. But what would you say to Nazi soldiers standing guard and leading prisoners into the gas chamber? If you say, quote, hey, what you're doing is wrong, unquote, and the Nazi soldier looks at you and asks, quote, based on what, unquote, how do you respond? What do you say? What's right and wrong? What I'm getting at is this question of, is there ultimate truth, ultimate right and wrong, or is there relativism? Mayfeld made the argument that all of us will change our rules and we'll change our views of right and wrong when things get heated or messy. I get that. I hear him loud and clear. Relativism, if people aren't very familiar with that, it's the stance that there is no ultimate right or wrong. Each person's truth is truth. And I was thinking back to the end of the Clone Wars that Aaron and I covered way back at the beginning of this year. And I cut a piece from our show notes and brought it over to these show notes, and it's Aaron and I covered this in great depth in the episode where Ahsoka is battling Maul on Mandalore. And I give this as an example of relativism, and it's stated by Maul at the end of the Clone Wars Season 7. And it's very fascinating to see the end of the Clone Wars from Maul's perspective, not only on Mandalore, but also inside his mind, right? he says this, and I put this quote in our show notes, like I said many months ago. Here's what Maul says to Ahsoka, standing in the throne room, right, where we saw all kinds of stuff go down. He says, "We were both tools for greater powers. For the Republic to fall," that was a response of his to Ahsoka. He says it already has, and you just can't see it. And then he says the big one. There is no justice. There is no law, no order, except for the one that will replace it. The time of the Jedi is past. They cannot defeat Sidious, but together you and I can. Now, here is Maul laying out, there is no ultimate truth. There is no law. There is no order. Just who is in power. The Jedi are gone. He's saying, hey, Sidious, it's his laws. It's his rules now. And even Maul extends the relativism to, hey, Ahsoka, join me and we'll rule and we'll set our own rules and we'll be the power base at that time. I share all this to say that as parents, these are very heavy and difficult questions. What is right and wrong? Is there evil in the world? Is there ultimate truth? Is there relativism? These are really heavy ones, just as heavy as the subject last week in terms of losing a child and how do you deal with that. But I bring these up not to, for our listeners to to hurt your mind, to hurt your head, to get you frustrated, but more to suggest, whether you're a parent or not, for parents, I'd really suggest thinking about these before your kids ask these really tough questions. Before they see you as a parent bend the rules a bit, tell a little white lie, or gossip about friends or family. I just really suggest this because the overarching theme of my Psychology Corner has been to help with parenting and with fatherhood and with motherhood too. So something to think about. I'm throwing out some of the biggest questions that our kids can ask us. Hey, Mom or Dad, why did you do that? I thought the rule was this. Well, don't pay attention to me doing that, son or daughter. So something to think about. A second issue that Mayfeld brings up, and he actually brings this up in the tank transport before they get into the mess hall. And he's doing this in his conversation with Mando about the suit, about the helmet, and what our sense of self is. And so what Mayfeld does as a psychologist here is he brings up the huge psychological issue of self, right? And or we can see it as our identity. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier when Aaron asked Adam and I about, Mando taking taking the mask off, taking the helmet off, and getting his face scanned. And we see here in Mando this sense of self is changing. His sense of self, it changes from the way. It really even probably starts several episodes ago when Bo-Katan is telling him, hey, you've been fed a line. That might be good to a certain degree, but, they call it a cult, right? Bo-Katan does with both of the other Mandalorians with her. So it starts that process of getting him to say, wait, maybe let me rethink my view of the way and being a Mandalorian. But he starts to change there and even before that, in terms of parenting. But here he really does change. And there's, huge growth when he decides not to wear that armor to help the child and with showing his face. Again, not just to Mayfeld and other persons in the mess hall, but letting his face be scanned by that Imperial terminal. That is big growth. Those are big changes with this ultimate growth of saving the child, of saving Grogu. And I wanted to share this with our clients. I do a lot of work that is called ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. And within it, the ultimate goal is to help people get from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility. And there's what are called pivots, 6 pivots that people can do to move from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility. And the reason why I bring this up is because out of those 6 pivots, there's pivot number 2 is called self. And Dr. Stephen Hayes, who's the originator of ACT theory, says that all of us have this conceptualized sense of self, meaning this, that we have the stories that all of us are told. The listeners now, Aaron, myself, Adam Bray, all of us humans learn ourselves through other people. But we also learn about ourselves, and we do tell ourselves not just what other people say, we repeat that to ourselves, but also what we say to ourselves. Not what other people say, but what we say to ourselves. And those things lead to a conceptualized self, which Dr. Stephen Hayes would say is not always healthy, because it doesn't allow us to have what's called a more perspective-taking sense of self. And I bring this up because we really see that process in The Mandalorian here. Again, Aaron asked the question earlier, of Adam and I, our thoughts about, the not just the tension in the mess hall, but this massive amount of growth by the Mandalorian. He goes from a conceptualized sense, what his Mandalorian covert has told him about the way, to what Bo-Katan has said, to interacting with Ahsoka, to interacting with Fennec Shand, to interacting with Boba, to then interacting with Mayfeld, and really hearing him discuss things on a very deep level, quite frankly. And we see that process from psychological rigidity to more psychological flexibility, from a conceptualized sense of self to a perspective-taking sense of self, where Mandalorian can start to see himself from multiple different perspectives, and that's a healthier way to see ourselves. And so, again, this episode just brings up so much good stuff and allows me to really talk about some of these really huge questions about right and wrong, evil, ultimate truth, relativism, and then also it gave me an opportunity here to talk about self. Obviously, we got the last episode coming up. We'll see what it brings. I'm sure there'll be no shortage of things to discuss from a psychological perspective. But just know, like some of our listeners have said, as we move into the rest of winter, spring, and Aaron and I do more episodes, I'll go over more of these things in depth. We've had, some listeners suggest some different topics and how we can cover it through Star Wars. There's no end to it. It is limitless, quite honestly. Again, looking at Star Wars from a mythological perspective and or a psychological perspective. So I gave a lot to people tonight to chew on. And so if you want to talk about any of these things more in depth, you can get a hold of me. I guess, Aaron, I'll run right into how they can get a hold of me. Two different ways. One is on Twitter. It's never changed. It's always been the same. It's David_Motters. And the email, if you want to talk about any of this stuff that I talked in a more extensive manner, I would definitely recommend email. I'll be more than happy to respond. My email is david@StarWarsReactions.com.
Very cool. Very cool. I love your psychology corners, David. They are the best. Thank you. And if you do want to talk Star Wars with me, best way to do that is Twitter. T.A. Harris 121079 is the best way to do that, or email Aaron@StarWarsReactions.com. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media. We are on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions, Twitter, SW Reactions Pod, and of course, Instagram, SW Reactions. And of course, if you do want to email us, you can do that as well. It is I almost said Coffee with Kenobi.
Me too.
You can email us at show@StarWarsReactions.com. There we go. All right. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Again, Adam, thank you. Adam Bray, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great time, great show with you. David, my friend, awesome as always.
Wow. No, it's so fun. Not only to have Adam on, he's just great, and obviously to be able to talk with you, and thank you for your kind words about the Psychology Corner. I put a lot into that, because you see the show notes, and so I'm really trying to bring some hopefully some fun and interesting stuff for our clients. Not so maybe depressing as last week's. But the show was called The Tragedy. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau called it The Tragedy. So we were appropriate in our psychology corner there. But hopefully people are enjoying it, and we'll bring more next episode, my friend.
Very good. Very good. And we want to take a moment just to thank everybody for listening in. We appreciate each and every one of you. We're praying for y'all. We're almost done with 2020, y'all. It's going to be great. We'll be back next week with the finale of The Mandalorian, Chapter 16. So we're looking forward to that. So stay safe, everyone. Take care. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.